Well, you're right that Trump has been launching a systematic use of defamation suits in an effort to repress criticism, and to some extent that's worked. Is Rupert Murdoch worried about the effects of the lawsuit? I very much doubt it. It's just a cost of doing business. But the political rift with Trump may be more costly to Rupert Murdoch. We'll see how that unfolds. So far, Murdoch is standing his ground, and the Wall Street Journal as well.
A showdown looms between two of the world's most powerful men, Donald Trump and Rupert Murdoch, with the American president suing the media mogul for a whopping $10 billion. Front and center of the case is Trump's connection to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, an issue that has become so divisive lately that it threatens to tear the MAGA movement apart and destabilize the president's leadership. Today, international and political editor Peter Harcher joins me to discuss what one of Trump's most loyal supporters, Steve Bannon, told him about the biggest controversy to hit Trump's second stint in the White House. Now, we often go down political and historical rabbit holes when we speak on this podcast. We don't usually have cause to go down conspiracy theory rabbit holes, but we're going to go there today, aren't we?
Well, since the entire political establishment of the US seems to be disappearing down, well, multiple conspiracy rabbit holes at the same time, if we want to understand what's going on in their system, we, I'm afraid, need to disappear down some of those holes briefly, just long enough to get a glimpse, and then we can extract ourselves back into reality.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit excited about it. So let's just start out with the basics. Why has Jeffrey Epstein, the late sex offender, been in the news for weeks now? And why has Donald Trump been engulfed in this scandal? Like, how did we get here?
We got here because before he was in the White House, in his second iteration, Donald Trump and a lot of his supporters had really fomented the conspiracy around Jeffrey Epstein to suggest, well, to claim, to sometimes imply that Epstein was the dark heart of an elite conspiracy of pedophiles, that Epstein was the pedophile pimp for a corrupt elite that Trump was determined to destroy. And Trump had even suggested, he and this is a common technique among conspiracy theorists, rather than directly state a claim which they know to be unsustainable, they will provoke with a question. So Trump had not said, for example, that he thought Bill Clinton was a client of Jeffrey Epstein.
And then the question you have to ask is, did Bill Clinton go to the island? Because Epstein had an island. That was not a good place, as I understand it, and I was never there. So you have to
But he said, is Bill Clinton on the list? We need an investigation. I don't know, maybe he's probably not, but is he on the list? That sort of provocation. So to imply that this conspiracy went to the very top of the Democratic Party and to promise to bring all the files into public view in the event that he were to win.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You don't want to...
That was the promise. Now he's in power. What's the delivery? The delivery is no delivery. It was just February when Pam Bondi, his Attorney General, whom we all want to call in Australia Bondi, the name of our famous beach, but Bondi had said that she had the client list of Jeffrey Epstein on her desk at the moment. She had brought a bunch of MAGA, Make America Great Again, influencers into her office to talk up the revelation that the Trump administration was about to deliver on this issue. And then last week, she issued an unsigned statement saying that there was no conspiracy, there was no blackmail, there was no client list, and case closed. Now, rather than close the case, that simply blew up the entire MAGA movement, which is now consumed with demands that the administration release all the information it has and put tremendous pressure on Donald Trump personally, which he's tried to deflect by saying, this is boring, it's a hoax, only some stupid Republicans are interested in this. Let's move on.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net, and so they try and do the Democrats' work.
But the MAGA movement's not buying it.
So, Peter, let's get into this. Tell us just how much over the last few weeks has this issue of the release of the Epstein files actually divided the MAGA base?
Well, it's completely consumed the MAGA base. Not so much divided it, because it's almost unanimously demanding more from Trump, more from the administration. Until last Thursday evening, US time, the movement was not divided, I don't think, at all. The clamour, the disappointment, the shock just absolutely occupied and preoccupied the movement. You had MAGA members making public statements saying Trump has turned out to be the deep state himself, rather than exposing the so-called deep state which secretly runs America. Trump had turned out to be part of it, that Trump was suppressing the client list, that Trump had something to hide, that it was a shocking betrayal of his followers. It was a real crisis because it's not the first crisis that the president has had with his movement, but it was the most serious wedge driven between the president and his base. And the base was angry and the base was unified.
Now, we're going to get into Steve Bannon in just a moment, because you have secured an incredible interview which gives us a really, an inside look into what some of the people in MAGA might be feeling now about this. But before we get there, I wanted to ask you, with regards to, the claims that Donald Trump might be part of the so-called deep state and he's perhaps wants to suppress these files, is there some suggestion that Donald Trump himself might have been somehow involved in Jeffrey Epstein's horrific crimes against young women and girls?
There is. Elon Musk said directly, without offering any sort of evidence, that Donald Trump was on the client list. And that theory has run around the echo chamber. And Donald Trump did have a personal relationship with Epstein for many years. There's lots of footage of them together, including the story which changed the whole direction of this story last week, which was the emergence, according to the Wall Street Journal, of a letter which it has not actually shown in any way, but has described and quoted from, which was a 50th birthday letter signed by Donald Trump, according to the Wall Street Journal, to Jeffrey Epstein.
Can you tell us a little bit about that letter and what the Wall Street Journal actually said about this? Because it really has, like you say, it's turned everything around. It's really made this whole issue explode. So tell us about this letter. I mean, the late night talk shows hosts have been having a field day with it. What's it all about?
The Wall Street Journal hasn't actually published the letter or taken a photograph of it for us to see, but says the Journal has seen the letter and describes it in print as being a birthday card with a crudely hand-drawn outline of a woman with Trump's signature in the position where her pubic hair would normally be. And inside the outline is a little poem devoted to Epstein's birthday, concluding with, and this is the most damaging line for his birthday wishes, he says, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret," which of course seems tailor-made to set off any conspiracy theorist, and that's what it's done. So a couple of important points to note here, Samantha. First, we should just for the record point out that Donald Trump denies that the letter is real. He says it's a fake, and he's suing the owner of the Wall Street Journal, including its proprietor, Rupert Murdoch, for $10 billion minimum for defamation. He says that he's never had any sexual dealings with Epstein, and that the whole thing is a horrible and disgusting, to use his word, hoax. It's also important to point out that we still haven't seen the letter that the Journal refers to and that Trump says is non-existent. And it's been pointed out, it's been claimed by some of his supporters that the whole thing was just a confection by Rupert Murdoch in order to put pressure on Trump and to deflect from yet another conspiracy theory that Trump was in the process of trying to pump up.
It's incredible. Okay, well, let's get to what Steve Bannon told you. So just to remind listeners, Steve Bannon was Trump's chief White House strategist during Trump's first term in office. He's still one of Trump's most loyal supporters. And actually, before I ask you, what it is that he has said about this letter, because he has said something very different to what other people are saying, why did you even speak to Steve Bannon in the first place? Because I know that there's been a lot of commenters who've responded to your latest piece by saying, why are you even giving this guy airtime? He's obviously on the far right. So what would you say to that, Peter?
Well, I'd start with the first principle that the guy is in the thick of the news story because as possibly the mainstay or one of the mainstays of the MAGA propaganda movement, he's been running this narrative and controlling it to some extent for a long time. And he has a big profile in the US and he's taken very seriously in the MAGA movement. But the other point I'll just make for non-journalists or people who aren't familiar with the way that credible journalism operates is that we don't just talk to people we agree with. We interview people who are making news and people who have something to say. And in this case, I thought could usefully help explain to us what's going on in the MAGA movement and with this story. But Bannon actually went above and beyond that to my surprise, but this is actually quite useful, I think, for an Australian audience. He gave us a case study in how this sort of conspiracy theory thinking could and would be applied in Australia if anybody should try it. And I thought that was a pretty interesting little sample and perhaps even a foretaste for conspiracy theorists homegrown here who might try some of this stuff on at some point.
Oh, for sure. It's surreal. And we're definitely going to get into this in a little bit. But tell us what Steve Bannon has said about this Wall Street Journal birthday card, which Trump says is not real. Because before the Wall Street Journal piece came out, Steve Bannon had said that, the MAGA movement really was divided, that they would lose 10% over the Epstein files. It might even cost them 40 seats in the House of Representatives at next year's midterm elections, might even lose the president. This is what he'd previously said.
Yeah.
But he said something completely different to you after this Wall Street Journal piece came out. What has he said to you about how this is going to affect Trump?
Well, he seized on that journal story to say that the true enemy has revealed itself. The true enemy being, in this case, in specific, the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch, but also the larger liberal media, the neoliberal Rupert Murdoch, as Bannon described him to me. Bannon says that Murdoch is the real enemy here. Bannon says that this was a Murdoch, quote, kill shot launched against Donald Trump, and that rather than despair over the entire crisis and what it's doing to the movement and to Trump, he seized on it as the solution. And he says now the entire MAGA movement has and will unite behind the president to defend him now that he's under attack. And we've got to take out Rupert Murdoch before Rupert Murdoch takes out Donald Trump.
Okay, this is so interesting. So you've got to walk us through how Steve Bannon explained that Rupert Murdoch, he's the enemy. He's actually part of the deep state here, because this would seem to make no sense, given that Rupert Murdoch's Fox News channel was instrumental, arguably, in helping Trump to win the White House not once, but twice. So what did Steve Bannon say about this?
Yeah, that's right. Rupert's Fox News channel, cable channel in the US, was the incubator for a lot of the MAGA movement and Trump voter base in his first run at the presidency. They had a pretty spectacular falling out after Trump lost the 2020 election and claimed that there had been it was a stolen election, and Rupert thought that Trump had gone too far and was going to be bad for business and was going to try and launch a coup. But then they had a reconciliation. Fox has gone back into support mode for Trump in recent times, and the two men have maintained a pretty cordial relationship and were together in the president's box watching a FIFA soccer match just 5 days before this so-called kill shot was launched by Rupert Murdoch. And according to Bannon, this was a kill shot, this story in the Journal, because Rupert Murdoch has decided to bring down Donald Trump, and that this story was launched deliberately to thwart, to deflect from another conspiracy that Trump was going to launch and talk about the next day, and that more broadly, as you've suggested there, he says that Murdoch is in league with the, quote, deep state, unquote, because they all want to bring down Donald Trump. That Donald Trump is the enemy of Murdoch because he believes in nationalism, whereas Murdoch believes in globalism and all of that. Essentially that they are philosophically and fundamentally enemies, and Bannon is uniting the party and says the party will be united behind the effort to destroy Rupert Murdoch.
And now Trump has vowed that he's going to sue Murdoch's ass off. That's a direct quote. And he also says it would be an interesting experience to get Rupert Murdoch in the witness box. So I guess what's your opinion here, Peter? Do you think this might actually end up hurting Rupert Murdoch rather than Trump in the end? Because surely Trump wouldn't want this to go to discovery and end up in court. Like, God knows what would come out.
Well, there's always that risk when you launch a court action. But Trump has launched hundreds of actions for all sorts of causes in his career. It's a reflex of his. I can't predict, but according to Bannon, the Fox audience will turn against Murdoch as a result of this, that it will lose ratings and that it will blow up Murdoch's entire US empire. Bannon made a few other comments which I wasn't able to accommodate in the written piece, but some of his other choice words about Rupert were that Rupert Murdoch was flaky, couldn't afford to be seen to be in the witness box because he'd be exposed. He said that Rupert Murdoch was a fake citizen because he only took up US citizenship at the last minute so he could buy Fox. He's really leading a full court denunciation and demonization of Rupert Murdoch. Which man will come out of it better? Who knows? They've had ructions before and they've both survived.
Did he suggest he had any inside knowledge of what might exactly be exposed for Rupert Murdoch should he end up in court?
No, it was more suggestions that he wouldn't be able to perform adequately in the witness box. The implication is that he's somehow mentally unsound or unstable or demented and or otherwise incapable. But as usual with conspiracy theorists, it's all suggestions, questions, and hints rather than outright statements.
I guess it is a live question, though, isn't it, about just how much Rupert Murdoch could be damaged? Because, of course, the context for this is that Donald Trump has launched a number of actions against other media companies. In some cases, he's won a lot of money, right? Like Paramount recently paid Donald Trump $16 million to settle a legal dispute. So do you think Rupert Murdoch is seriously worried about this?
Well, you're right that Trump has been launching a systematic use of defamation suits in an effort to repress criticism, and to some extent that's worked. Is Rupert Murdoch worried about the effects of the lawsuit? I very much doubt it. It's just a cost of doing business facing this risk in our industry. And we all get the Sydney Morning Herald, The Age, we get defamation writs and claims brought against us most days of the week. But the political rift with Trump may be more costly to Rupert Murdoch. We'll see how that unfolds. So far, Murdoch is standing his ground, and the Wall Street Journal as well.
Okay, but this is where your interview with Steve Bannon took a bit of a surreal turn, I would suggest, because according to Steve Bannon, this whole Rupert Murdoch, Donald Trump stoush illuminates that us Australians actually have bigger things to worry about. So tell us what Steve Bannon said on that count.
I might resort to quoting directly from my column here, Samantha, so that we get the accurate state of who's actually running Australia.
Conspiracy theories.
So Steve Bannon said to me that after targeting Rupert Murdoch, the number one thing we have to do now is take down the deep state. Now, just for those who aren't across all the details of American conspiracy theorism, the deep state was a phrase that had its origins in Turkey decades ago. It was meant to suggest that there was a permanent bureaucracy of officials in the national security establishment of Turkey, which was always in position, was never ousted, never forced out of power, and that was running affairs, controlling the government and the president of Turkey, regardless of what he would want to do. And from there, that was adapted and adopted in other countries, but notably in recent years in the US, to apply to the US intelligence services, alleging that they have a secret power to operate the government regardless of what the president and the Congress wants. Let me quote Bannon talking to me. He said, "The number one thing we have to do now is take down the deep state. Who governs us?" And he talked about the Trump 2 assassination attempts on Trump. He said that the FBI hadn't revealed all the files yet, implying that the FBI was complicit in the assassination attempts on Donald Trump. And Bannon goes on, who governs this country? The intelligence agencies, the CIA, Mossad, the FBI, the Five Eyes. The Five Eyes, again by way of background, is an intelligence sharing arrangement between 5 Anglophone allies, and this grew up out of World War II, where the US, the UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand started to share intelligence in the war, and that's continued to this day. Says Bannon, who governs your country, to me, hinting that a conspiracy of the 5 countries' intelligence agencies might secretly control the Australian government. Says Bannon, this is of vital importance to Australia. Do elections mean anything? This is bigger than Watergate. Now, he didn't produce any evidence. He didn't produce any actual substantiation, but it's a conspiracy theory and you can't really ask too much.
What did you think when he told you that? Were you thinking, oh, I didn't realize that your conspiracy theory thoughts were sort of, heading our direction? Or what did you think, Peter?
Well, first thing I thought was he's good interview talent because he's catering to his audience. He's talking about the Australian interest in this. The second thing I thought was I've never heard this before, even from the nuttiest Australians. And in our line of work, Samantha, we deal with them occasionally. There are plenty. I'm sitting in Parliament House. We even have 1 or 2 here. And the third thing I thought was, this is fascinating because it tells us that if you apply this approach to conspiracy mongering that Bannon and the MAGA movement does in the US, this is the sort of thing we'd expect to hear from them here. So I thought there was a useful premonition, forewarning perhaps.
And Peter, just to get back to the issue of Epstein and Trump and where this goes from here, I want to know if this is far from over, because we know there's a bipartisan push within Congress to vote to compel the Justice Department to release all the documents that it has on Jeffrey Epstein. What is the chance that that will go ahead and succeed? Because it's been a big issue this week.
So we have a few weeks now where the Trump administration will be hoping that the MAGA movement can be persuaded to forget about this story. I think it's 5 weeks is the recess. Chances of that seem to me to be low. Chances seem to me to be that the Republican Party is going to continue to be under pressure from the MAGA movement. The two are connected, overlap, but are also, not identical, to produce more documents to clear this up. There's a lot of suspicion now in the MAGA movement. So Bannon for weeks had been urging Trump to give him a get out of jail card on this, saying, well, if you're not going to produce any files or documents, ask the courts to produce any evidence held under seal, testimony held under seal, and that could clear this up. And after the Wall Street Journal letter and the pressure mounting, Trump has done exactly that. He's taken Bannon's advice. Bannon wants him to go further, though, and this you can expect to be picked up across, or already has been picked up across the MAGA movement. Bannon has been demanding that Trump appoint a special prosecutor to investigate the Epstein case and who might be involved and what other implications there might be. We know that the Congress, as well as the Justice Department separately, are asking Ghislaine Maxwell, who was Epstein's conspirator, literal conspirator rather than fantasy conspirator, to come and testify, to speak publicly, to talk about what evidence she might have. So this is not going to go away, and I think Trump will continue to be under pressure unless he figures out a better way of dealing with it. I've asked Bannon, do you think Trump is on the list? Is he on the client list if such a list exists? Bannon says 0 chance. Bannon also sees that this is a ruction that the movement will have to get through, but assured me that the movement would be fully united in time for the midterm elections next year.
Well, it'll definitely be interesting to see. And who knows, we might yet again end up talking about conspiracy theories, because just a couple hours before we're recording this, Trump has suggested that former American President Barack Obama committed treason when he was in power. And I think possibly as a means of sort of sidestepping or getting people to look away from the Jeffrey Epstein file. So I guess we could be coming back to this.
Well, it's going to persist, and if you're looking at a country governed by conspiracy mongers, then I'm afraid we're going to have to get involved in at least discussing this, if not fully credulously falling down the rabbit hole with them.
Well, thank you so much, Peter, as always, for your time.
Always a pleasure, Samantha, and sometimes more bizarre pleasure than others.